Have you ever noticed something unusual about Filipinos? Imagine you're standing inside an international airport. A Filipino tourist walks by and someone mistakes him for Korean. A few minutes later, another Filipino is greeted in Spanish because people assume she's from Mexico. Then another family arrives and they're asked if they're Hawaiian or Indonesian. The surprising part is that all of them are Filipinos. Even more surprising, some of them could actually be brothers and sisters. If you've ever looked at a Filipino family, you've probably seen it yourself. One sibling has fair skin and almond-shaped eyes. Another has curly hair, darker skin, and a completely different facial structure. Yet they share the same parents and grew up in the same home. So why does this happen? Why do Filipinos seem to have such an incredible variety of appearances compared to many other Asian populations? For a long time, many people believed the answer was simple. They thought Spanish colonization was the main reason. Others believed it was mostly because of Chinese ancestry. While both played a role in our history, scientists now know that the real answer goes much deeper. In fact, the story begins tens of thousands of years before the first Spanish ship ever reached Philippine shores. The Philippines is made up of more than 7,000 islands located at the heart of Southeast Asia. Because of its location, the archipelago became a natural meeting point for different groups of people over thousands of years. Long before there were countries and borders, travelers, explorers, and skilled seafarers were already moving across the oceans, bringing with them new cultures, technologies, and eventually, new generations of people. One of the earliest chapters of this story began when some of the first modern humans arrived in the Philippine Islands more than 50,000 years ago. These early settlers learned to survive in forests, mountains, and coastal communities. Over countless generations, they adapted to different environments and established communities that would become part of the foundation of Filipino ancestry. Thousands of years later, another important migration changed everything. Groups of highly skilled seafarers arrived carrying knowledge of farming, pottery, weaving, and advanced boat-building techniques. They didn't simply visit the islands. They settled, built communities, and gradually mixed with the people who were already living there. Instead of replacing earlier populations, they became part of an even larger and more diverse society. This pattern repeated itself again and again throughout history. The Philippines continued to welcome new waves of people from neighboring regions. Traders from China regularly visited the islands, exchanging silk, porcelain, spices, and other valuable goods. Some decided to stay permanently, married local families, and became part of Filipino society. Over many generations, their descendants contributed to the country's growing diversity. Communities from nearby parts of Southeast Asia also interacted with Filipinos through trade and migration. Because the Philippines sat at the crossroads of important sea routes, people from different cultures naturally met, traded, and sometimes built families together. Every generation added another layer to the country's remarkable genetic story. Then came the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century. For more than 300 years, Spanish influence transformed Philippine religion, architecture, language, education, and government. Naturally, intermarriage also happened. However, modern genetic research suggests that while European ancestry is present in some Filipino families, it generally represents only a relatively small part of the average Filipino's overall genetic background. Most of our ancestry comes from populations that lived in or migrated through the islands thousands of years before colonization. But perhaps the most fascinating discovery of all came from modern DNA research. Scientists found that the Filipino genetic story is far more complex than anyone had imagined. Instead of tracing our ancestry to only one or two major populations, researchers discovered evidence of multiple ancient migrations occurring over tens of thousands of years. Each migration added another chapter to the Filipino identity, creating one of the most genetically diverse populations in Asia. This explains why there is no single Filipino look. Some Filipinos naturally have lighter skin and East Asian facial features. Others have darker complexions, curlier hair, or facial characteristics commonly seen across different parts of Southeast Asia and the Pacific. None of these appearances make someone more or less Filipino. They simply reflect the incredible journey our ancestors took over thousands of years. Geography also played an important role. Unlike countries connected by one large landmass, the Philippines consists of thousands of islands separated by seas and mountain ranges. For centuries, many communities developed independently from one another. As a result, regional populations gradually developed their own unique combinations of ancestral influences. This is one reason why Filipinos from different parts of the country can sometimes have noticeably different physical features while sharing the same national identity. And that's only part of the story. Modern genetics has also helped explain another mystery that many Filipino families know all too well. Why can two brothers look completely different even though they have the same parents? The answer lies in the remarkable way DNA is inherited, where every child receives a unique combination of genes from both mother and father. It's like shuffling a deck of cards. No two hands are ever exactly the same. But genetics doesn't work like mixing two cans of paint. It's much more unpredictable than that. Every child receives a random combination of genes from both parents. That's why two brothers can have completely different skin tones, different eye shapes, or even different hair textures. One child may inherit more traits from one side of the family, while another inherits more from the other side. It's the same reason why one sibling might resemble their father while another looks almost exactly like their mother. In the Philippines, where many families already have a rich mix of ancestries, these differences become even more noticeable. Geography made this diversity even greater. The Philippines isn't one large landmass. It's an archipelago with more than 7,000 islands. For centuries, many communities lived separately because mountains, forests, and seas limited travel. Families in northern Luzon had different interactions and migration patterns than those in the Visayas or Mindanao. Over hundreds of generations, these communities developed their own unique genetic combinations while still sharing the same Filipino identity. This is why you may notice certain regional differences. Some people from northern Luzon are more likely to have facial features commonly associated with East Asia. In many parts of the Visayas, you'll find a balanced mix of characteristics that many people consider the classic Filipino look. Meanwhile, several communities in Mindanao and nearby islands reflect the long history of interaction with neighboring populations from maritime Southeast Asia. Of course, these are only broad patterns. Every Filipino family has its own unique story, and no single appearance represents an entire region. Another reason Filipinos are often mistaken for other nationalities is our location on the map. The Philippines sits between East Asia, mainland Southeast Asia, and the Pacific. For thousands of years, merchants, fishermen, explorers, and travelers crossed these waters. Every new connection left traces not only in our culture but also in our ancestry. Instead of developing in complete isolation, the Filipino people became part of one of the longest stories of human movement in the region. That's why a Filipino visiting Japan might be mistaken for Japanese. Another traveling in Mexico may be greeted in Spanish. Someone visiting Hawaii could easily be assumed to be local. It's not because Filipinos don't have their own identity. It's because our appearance reflects thousands of years of shared human history across Asia and the Pacific. Unfortunately, physical appearance has also influenced how people judge one another. For many years, lighter skin was often associated with beauty, wealth, or social status because of historical and cultural influences. At the same time, darker skin was sometimes unfairly looked down upon. But modern genetics tells a very different story. There is no scientific basis for saying that one Filipino appearance is more authentic than another. Every shade of skin, every eye shape, every facial feature represents a different chapter of the same remarkable history. In other words, diversity isn't an exception among Filipinos. Diversity is our identity. Scientists continue studying Filipino genetics because there is still so much to learn. New discoveries may help improve medicine by identifying health risks that are more common among Filipinos and by developing treatments better suited to our population. Understanding our genetic history isn't only about satisfying curiosity. It can also help improve healthcare for future generations while giving us a deeper appreciation of where we came from. Perhaps that's the biggest lesson of all. For centuries, people tried to explain Filipinos using simple labels. Some called us East Asian. Others grouped us with Southeast Asians or Pacific Islanders. But the truth is much richer than any single category. The Filipino story cannot be told by one migration, one culture, or one period of history. It is the result of thousands of years of journeys, encounters, adaptation, and survival. So the next time someone asks, "Where are you really from?" remember that the answer goes far beyond a city, an island, or even a country. Your story stretches back through countless generations of people who crossed oceans, built communities, overcame challenges, and passed their legacy from one generation to the next. Every Filipino carries a piece of that incredible journey. And maybe that's what makes the Philippines truly unique. We don't all look the same because we were never meant to. Our diversity isn't something to question or compare. It's living proof of one of the most extraordinary human stories ever written, a story that continues every time a new Filipino is born. So whether you have fair skin or moreno skin, straight hair or curly hair, almond-shaped eyes or round eyes, remember this. There is no single Filipino face. There never was. The real Filipino identity isn't defined by looking alike. It's defined by sharing the same history, the same resilience, and the same home. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who has probably been asked the same question. Where are you really from? Because once you understand the science behind the Filipino story, you'll never see our identity the same way again.